Assassination of American President Abraham Lincoln. True story condensed from the original hardback edition of 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chiniquy. In 1879, Jesuits were after Charles Chiniquy. They made over 30 public attacks on his life. Gail Schuler has suffered as many or more attacks on her life as Charles Chiniquy in the 20th and 21st centuries. But Jesus Christ created Gail with a powerful Gail shield that has protected her from many of these attempts on her life. This Gail shield is an extension of her genetic profile that forms a dome over where she lives and blocks Jesuit nuclear bombs from killing Gail and those about her. This Gail shield has so strengthened in 2016 because of Gail and her men obeying commandments given to Gail by Jesus Christ in March 2016 that it has literally saved planet Earth from total annihilation by Jesuit nuclear bombs. The Jesuit order in 2016 has a space fleet, which Satan helped them to build, and because the Gail shield has killed off Jesuits, most Jesuits are staying alive by living on the Jesuit space fleet, while they launch bombs onto Earth below. Jesuits will stop at nothing to win, even if they have to kill everyone on Earth, because they know that they can replace everyone on Earth below with a Jesuit clone. With the exception of Gail Schuler, whose King David, Catherine the Great genetic profile seems immune to their cloning technology. None of Gail's clones last longer than a couple weeks. Jesuits know if they can kill Gail, they can conquer the world. Only Gail in 2016 stands in their way, but the mighty Gail shield, created by Jesus Christ as part of Gail's genetic profile, stands in their way. If they can kill Gail, they can defeat the Gail shield because Gail would no longer be on Earth. The following true story about Charles Chiniquy shows how Jesuits will stop at nothing to accomplish their goals. Before Charles Chiniquy was born, his dad was studying to become a Roman Catholic priest in Canada. But his father saw something happen in the Catholic Church that so upset him that he quit, studied law, and became a notary. As his dad was leaving the priesthood, a close friend gave him a beautiful French and Latin Bible. His dad remained a devout Roman Catholic and married Renée Perrot in 1808. A little later, Charles Chiniquy was born in a small village called Kamouraska in Quebec, Canada. 5 years later, his family moved to Murray's Bay. His mother taught Charles to read Bible because there were no schools. "Do you understand what you just read, son?" his mother said. "Yes, Mama." By the time he was 8 or 9 years old, he had memorized from that Bible the creation and the fall of man, the flood, the sacrifice of Isaac, the history of Moses, the plagues of Egypt, the hymn of Moses after crossing the Red Sea, the history of Samson, important events in the life of David, several psalms, all of Christ's speeches and parables, and the entire history of Jesus Christ's suffering and death as written by John. When it rained so hard that farmers couldn't go to church, they would go to the Chiniquy home in the evening to hear little Charles recite portions of the Bible. They loved it. The farmers were touched. One day, the parish priest came to the Chiniquy home. The Chiniquy family was thrilled and honored at what appeared a friendly visit. "Mr. Chiniquy, is it true that you and your child read the Bible?" the priest said. "Yes, sir." His dad explained how much of the Bible his son had memorized. "You are forbidden by the Holy Council of Trent to read the Bible in French. It is my painful duty to come here, to get the Bible from you and burn it." Mr. Chiniquy's face became an inferno. The priest backed off in fright. The son never saw his father so furious. A dead silence followed. Mr. Chiniquy glared at the priest. "Is that all you have to say?" "Yes, sir," the priest said. "There's the door," the father said. "Get out fast." The priest scuttled out. Little Charles beamed with pride over his dad's courage to defend the Bible. He kissed his dad. jumped on top of a large table, and recited the story of David and Goliath. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword and a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord. The son felt his dad was David against the Philistine, that evil Roman Catholic priest who David struck down. 3 years later, at age 12, young Charles had been sent to a private school. He wanted desperately to see his parents when he arrived home. His father was delighted with the progress he made in school. Is my geometry correct, father? He asked his dad. Yes, son, I'm so proud of you. It was a precious reunion. That night they had family worship, and then all went to their beds to sleep. At 4 a.m., his mother screamed, Oh no! God, no! The son jumped out of his bed to run toward his parents' room. Mama, what's the matter? Oh, my dear sweet child, she wailed. Your father is dead. Her body slumped to the floor in a faint. While a friend took care of her, Charles limped to his father's bed. He pressed close to his dad, smothering him with tears. He couldn't believe his father was gone. Oh, Father, Father, come back to us, please, God. Save my father. But his body was already cold. They buried him 2 days later. His mother, sick with grief, could not walk during the funeral procession. Now a widow, living among strangers, her strong young husband was gone, leaving her with 3 little boys. She was without a dime and had no way to make a living. The mother cried day and night on her knees, "O Lord, be kind to me and my sad 3 little boys." A few days after the funeral, little Charles saw the parish priest coming towards their house. "Mother, the priest is coming!" "Oh, thank God!" She welcomed the priest as an angel from heaven, because everyone knew the priest was now rich. She expected help and comfort from him. "Do you still read your Bible, little boy?" the priest asked little Charles. "Yes, sir." The priest blasted his mother about this until she broke into tears. After a long silence, he said, "Madame, you owe me for the prayers which have been sung, and the other services you asked for when your husband died. I will be very happy if you paid off that little bill." "Mr. Courtois, my husband left me nothing but debts. Please do not take from us the little that is left." "Madame, your husband died suddenly and wasn't prepared. Because of that, he's in purgatory." He paused. "As the church offers prayers and masses, you must join us by giving all you can to get your husband out of purgatory." "I told you, my husband left me penniless. It's impossible for me to give you any money." He pushed her harder. "I will soon lose my house and land," she said. "You must pay for those masses we offered for your husband." The mother tried to recollect herself and remained silent for minutes. "Sir, do you see that cow out there? Most of the food my children get comes from that cow." "Yes." "I hope you won't take our cow," she gasped. "But if the masses you offer will help my poor husband's soul in purgatory and will put out those flames, then take our cow to pay for those masses." "Very well, madame." His face was cold as ice. He left the house and headed towards the cow. "Mama," Charles said, "he's taking our cow. We'll die of hunger. What are we going to do?" Mrs. Chiniquy cried out in grief as the priest and their cow disappeared. Oh! She knelt with Charles, sobbing and trying to pray. "I didn't think the priest would be that cruel." Her sobs choked in her throat. She couldn't speak and turned pale. A cold sweat came on her face as she fell to the floor, overwhelmed with grief. After drinking some water, she revived and faced little Charles. "My son, if you ever become a priest, promise me you'll always be kind to poor widows." "I promise, Mother." Charles Chiniquy did become a Roman Catholic priest, and never forgot his mother's words, nor her tears on that fateful day. He recalled what the Bible said in Matthew 23:14. Jesus said, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye devour widows' houses, and for a pretense, a big act, make long prayer. Therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation." God heard his mother's prayers. A few days later, some letters arrived from his mother's two sisters. One offered to take in his mother and two younger brothers. The other, who just lost their own little boy, wanted Charles. When they were selling the furniture, his Bible disappeared. Charles was sick about it. He went by boat to his new home. His uncle and Aunt Dion welcomed him. They asked Charles what he wanted to be when he grew up. "I want to become a priest," he said. They arranged for him to study Latin under the vicar, an important priest in town, of Kamaraska. A few months later, his teacher asked him to give a speech at a birthday party given by the parish priest, Mr. Varon, who was a Catholic pastor of the church. Varon invited all the town's important people to hear it. Charles ended his speech by giving the pastor a bouquet of flowers. This moved Mr. Varon greatly. To this pastor, Charles was the angel of the parish. They sang songs, and about 15 gentlemen, including priests, and as many ladies participated. They opened up the dining room, where a long table was covered with the most delicious meats and wine you could ever find. Because of his speech, little Charles was allowed to join them. After dinner, the ladies left the table and went to the drawing room, while the men toasted each other. They shouted, "To the Reverend Mr. Varon! To Mr. Varon!" After Charles finished a glass of wine, his uncle said, "No more, or I'll make you leave the table." It came time for little Charles Chiniquy to make a toast. "Let us drink to our Holy Father, the Pope." After so many toasts, the wine started having its effects. "To the Pope! Ha, 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 ha! Ha, ha! Yes, to the Pope!" One priest got up from his chair and fell headlong to the floor. His neighbors were too drunk to help. Everyone laughed. "Ha, ha, ha, ha! Ha, ha, ha!" Little Charles couldn't believe his eyes. These men of God were drunk and falling on the floor. Charles Chiniquy never forgot what he saw. One day he would become a priest who would cause Canada to pass laws outlawing the sale of liquor. Chiniquy noticed that Roman Catholic priests took great care to prepare children for their first communion. The children go to church to learn the catechism and the explanation of all its teaching. Mr. Morin, who taught Charles Latin, instructed the children for their first communion. During the catechism, Jesus is removed from the child's heart and replaced with Mary. It's so cleverly done that most children involved are brainwashed into this. "My child, when you have been guilty of doing something wrong at home, who was the first to punish you, your father or your mother?" "My father!" "That's right, my child. As a matter of fact, the father is almost always upset with his children and more ready to spank them than the mother. Now, my child, tell us who spanked you the hardest, your father or your mother?" "My father." "Still true, my child. The superior goodness of a kind mother is understood even in the act of correction. She doesn't hit as hard as the father, even when you deserve to be spanked. Didn't someone sometimes come between you and your father's sticker belt, taking it from him?" "Yes, many times my mother saved me from a real hard spanking." "That is so, my child, and not only you, but all your friends here. My children, haven't your good mothers often saved you from your father's spankings, even when you deserved it? Answer me." "Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Morin. Yes." "One question more. When your father was coming to whip you, didn't you throw yourself